Policeman attacks pregnant black woman, and the dog does something nobody expected. What happens when a moment of peaceful solitude is shattered by the harsh realities of the world? In a sun-drenched park in a bustling city, a woman named Mia, 8 months pregnant and savoring the warmth of the afternoon, finds herself at the center of an unexpected confrontation that will test her courage and resilience. With dreams of becoming a mother and aspirations of a brighter future, Mia's heart swells with hope. Yet, as she walks her loyal dog, Jasper, through the park, the weight of societal prejudice looms over her like a dark cloud, threatening to extinguish her dreams. Before we start, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories like this one. Comment on which city you're watching from. We want to get to know you and find out how far this story will go. Now get ready. Let's get started. Mia, a vibrant African-American woman, has always been the embodiment of strength and determination. She has faced her share of obstacles, racial biases, financial struggles, and the daunting challenges of impending motherhood. As she strolls along the winding path, her mind drifts to thoughts of her unborn child, imagining the joy and love that will soon fill her home. However, that tranquility is abruptly shattered when a police officer approaches her with aggressive demeanor. His harsh words cut through the serenity like a knife, instilling an overwhelming sense of fear and humiliation. The park, once a sanctuary, transforms into a battleground, and Mia is left feeling vulnerable and exposed. In this moment, the conflict intensifies. The officer's accusations, baseless and steeped in prejudice, echo in Mia's ears, drowning out the laughter of children playing nearby and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. The confrontation escalates as he raises his voice, drawing attention from onlookers who watch in stunned silence. Mia's heart races, not just from fear, but from the realization that she is being judged solely by the color of her skin. The emotional turmoil is palpable. She grapples with a mix of anger and despair, feeling the weight of injustice pressing down on her. Just as the situation reaches a boiling point, Jasper, her loyal canine companion, steps into the fray. A gentle soul, he has always been attuned to Mia's emotions, sensing her pain and fear. In a moment of instinctual bravery, he lunges forward, barking fiercely, surprising everyone, including Mia. This unexpected turn of events shifts the dynamic of the confrontation, momentarily redirecting the officer's attention. In that split second, Mia is reminded of the unwavering loyalty and love that still exists in the world, even amidst chaos and hostility. As the tension crackles in the air, the scene unfolds with raw emotion. Mia's heart swells with gratitude for Jasper, understanding that this moment is not just about her struggle, but about the broader fight against injustice. It becomes clear that she is not alone in her battle. There are allies in unexpected places, and sometimes courage comes in the form of a four-legged friend. This incident will not only change the course of her day, but will also serve as a pivotal moment in her journey toward empowerment and resilience. Throughout this harrowing encounter, Mia begins to question the very beliefs that have shaped her reality. Why must she endure such humiliation? Why is her existence viewed through a lens of suspicion? These questions ripple through her mind, igniting a fierce determination to rise above the prejudice that seeks to define her. This confrontation is not merely an obstacle. It is a catalyst for change, a call to action that propels her toward a newfound purpose. As the dust settles, Mia recognizes that this incident is a microcosm of a larger societal issue, one that demands attention and reform. The emotional impact of the confrontation lingers, but it also fuels her resolve to advocate for herself and others who face similar injustices. In that park, surrounded by the echoes of her dreams and the warmth of the sun, she begins to understand that the fight for justice is not just about her. It is about creating a better world for her child and generations to come. In a moment of vulnerability, she discovers the true essence of strength, the courage to stand up, speak out, and challenge the status quo. As Mia stood trembling in the park, the officer's words echoed in her mind, twisting into a cacophony of doubt and fear. The sun, once a warm embrace, felt like a glaring spotlight exposing her to the scrutiny of the world. She could feel the eyes of onlookers boring into her, their silence a mix of curiosity and discomfort, as if they were witnessing a performance they didn't want to be part of. What had begun as a peaceful walk with Jasper had spiraled into a nightmare, forcing her to confront the harsh realities of prejudice that she had long tried to navigate. The officer, towering and authoritative, seemed oblivious to her vulnerability. As he continued to raise his voice, Mia's heart raced, not only from fear, but also from the deep-seated anger that began to bubble within her. She had always been the type to stand her ground, yet in this moment, the weight of her pregnancy and the judgments cast upon her felt like shackles. She was not just fighting for herself, she was fighting for the life growing inside her, a life she wanted to shield from the ugliness of the world. Just then, a young woman named Clara, who had been jogging in the park, paused at the commotion. With a determined look, she stepped closer, her presence a beacon of unexpected support. Clara had always been an advocate for social justice, and her heart ached at the sight of Mia's distress. "Excuse me, officer," she interjected, her voice calm yet firm. "Is there a reason for this treatment? She's done nothing wrong." The officer turned, momentarily distracted by Clara's confidence, allowing Mia a brief moment to catch her breath. In that instant, Mia felt a flicker of hope. Clara's intervention was a reminder that not everyone viewed her through a lens of suspicion. There were allies in the world, people willing to stand up against injustice, yet the fear of what could happen next gnawed at her. Would the officer escalate the situation? Would he retaliate against Clara for daring to question him? Mia's mind raced with the possibilities, each one darker than the last. As Clara spoke, Mia's thoughts drifted to her childhood, where her mother had instilled in her the belief that they were stronger together, that community and solidarity could overcome the burdens of societal prejudice. But as she watched Clara challenge the officer, doubt crept in. Was she truly strong enough to face this moment? Could she really advocate for herself and her child when the world seemed so intent on tearing them down? Jasper, sensing her turmoil, nudged her hand, grounding her in the present. His unwavering loyalty reminded her of the love that existed, often overshadowed by fear. The bond between them was a testament to resilience, a quiet strength that urged her to stand firm. With a deep breath, Mia straightened her posture, her resolve hardening like steel. Clara continued to speak, her voice rising above the tension, urging others nearby to take note, to witness what was happening. Mia felt a swell of gratitude for this stranger who had stepped in, embodying the very spirit of resistance she yearned to embrace. "You have no right to treat her this way," Clara asserted, her eyes fierce with conviction. "This isn't just about her, it's about all of us." The officer, visibly agitated by Clara's defiance, barked back, but Mia sensed a shift. The crowd, once passive observers, began to murmur among themselves, some nodding in agreement with Clara. The power of collective voices started to rise, challenging the oppressive atmosphere that had threatened to engulf Mia. Mia felt the pulse of the moment quicken, her heart aligning with the determination around her. She realized that this was not merely an isolated incident. It was a reflection of the ongoing struggle for equality and justice that extended far beyond her own experience. It was a call to action, a chance for her to reclaim her narrative and stand against the injustices that had plagued her and so many others throughout their lives. As the confrontation unfolded, Mia understood that she was at a crossroads. The fears that had once loomed large began to shrink in the face of unity and courage. The emotional turmoil of the moment tested her limits, forcing her to confront the stark realities of her existence. Yet, it also illuminated the path forward, showing her that vulnerability could coexist with strength, and that her fight was not only for her own dignity, but also for the dignity of all those who had suffered in silence. Mia looked at Clara, a newfound ally, and nodded with determination. Together, they were forging a connection that transcended their differences, united by a common purpose. The challenges ahead would be daunting, but in that moment, Mia felt a surge of hope. She was not just a victim of circumstance, she was a warrior, ready to advocate for herself and her child, prepared to challenge the status quo and ignite a movement that could inspire change. The park, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a battleground of resilience and empowerment, where Mia would no longer be defined by others' prejudices, but would define herself and her future. As the murmurs around them grew louder, Mia felt the weight of the moment shift. Yet even in this surge of solidarity, new challenges began to emerge, complicating her fight. Just as Clara finished her impassioned plea, another officer arrived on the scene, his demeanor cold and unyielding. He assessed the situation with a dismissive glance, clearly unimpressed by Clara's assertiveness. "What's going on here?" he barked, his tone laced with authority that sent a shiver down Mia's spine. The first officer, now flustered, began to explain the situation, but Mia could see the second officer's eyes narrow as he scanned her with an air of contempt. The arrival of backup escalated the tension, and Mia felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. She realized that the solidarity she had sensed was fragile. Would the situation spiral into something worse? Mia's heart raced as she fought to keep her emotions in check. The anger she had felt moments ago was now mingled with despair. The reality that her vulnerability could be met with further aggression weighed heavily on her. She wanted to cry, to scream, but instead she focused on Jasper, who remained steadfast at her side. His presence was a reminder of the strength she needed to summon, yet she felt a flicker of doubt. What if this escalated beyond her control? Clara, sensing the shift in atmosphere, turned her attention to the new officer, her voice steady yet imploring. "She hasn't done anything wrong. You're treating her as if she's a criminal. This is harassment." But the second officer remained stoic, his eyes fixed on Mia as if she were a puzzle he was determined to solve, but in a way that suggested he was convinced of her guilt. As the officers exchanged words, Mia felt the crowd's energy shift. Some onlookers had begun to record the incident on their phones, while others were whispering amongst themselves, their expressions a mix of sympathy and apprehension. The realization that she was now a spectacle, a point of contention in a larger societal issue, sent waves of vulnerability crashing over her. She could feel her heart pounding in her ears, drowning out the voices around her. In that moment, Mia's thoughts drifted to her mother's teachings about resilience and community, but now those lessons felt distant, overshadowed by the very real fear of how this encounter might unfold. Would this become a viral moment, a cautionary tale shared on social media, or worse, would she be arrested for standing her ground? Jasper nudged her again, grounding her in reality. She could sense his anxiety, his protective instincts flaring as he sensed the rising tension. Mia took a deep breath, attempting to reclaim her composure. She couldn't let fear dictate her actions. But then, she remembered the stories she had heard from friends of people who had stood up only to be met with aggression, their lives altered in an instant. As Clara continued to argue with the officers, Mia felt a surge of guilt. Was she putting Clara at risk by being here? Clara was only trying to help, yet the stakes felt impossibly high. The emotional toll of the moment pressed down on her, and she felt tears welling in her eyes, a mix of frustration and fear. She didn't want to be a burden. She wanted to be strong, not just for herself, but for the child inside her who deserved a world free from prejudice and fear. Suddenly, A man in the crowd, someone Mia recognized from her neighborhood, stepped forward. "This isn't right," he said, his voice rising above the murmur. "We can't let this happen. We have to support her." His call for solidarity sparked a ripple of agreement through the crowd. More people began to step forward, echoing their support for Mia. This shift ignited something within her, a flicker of defiance that pushed back against the fear that had threatened to consume her. But just as hope began to bloom, the second officer stepped closer to Mia, his voice low and threatening. "You need to step back and let us handle this, or you'll regret it." The threat hung ominously in the air, and Mia felt her heart plummet. The fear that had been building inside her threatened to burst forth, overwhelming her resolve. In that moment, Clara and the man from the crowd locked eyes with Mia, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They were all in this together. Mia realized that she wasn't alone. Her fight was not just her own, but part of a larger struggle against the very prejudices that sought to demean and dehumanize individuals like her. As she prepared to speak, to reclaim her narrative, she felt the weight of her experiences coalescing into a single, powerful declaration. This was her moment to stand up, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever faced injustice. The crowd around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. With newfound resolve, Mia took a step forward, her voice steady. "No more. I will not be silent. I deserve respect, just like everyone else." In that moment, she felt a shift in the atmosphere, a collective breath of anticipation from the crowd, as if they were all leaning into a pivotal moment of change. The confrontation had escalated, but so too had her determination. As she prepared to face the looming challenge, she understood that this was not simply a moment of crisis. It was a turning point. The fight for her dignity and the dignity of her child had officially begun. As the crowd held its breath, Mia felt a surge of warmth and strength course through her. The solidarity of those around her was palpable, each person a thread woven into a tapestry of collective resistance. But just as she gathered the courage to voice her truth, the second officer stepped even closer, his presence looming like a storm cloud. His threat hung heavy in the air, but Mia refused to back down. She could see Clara's fierce determination mirrored in the faces of the others who had stepped forward. Each one of them was a beacon of hope, a reminder that they were not just witnesses, but active participants in this moment of potential change. The realization struck her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had ever felt the weight of injustice, everyone who had been silenced by fear. With her heart pounding, Mia took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her community surrounding her. "I will not be silent," she declared, her voice steady and unwavering. The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement, a wave of support washing over her. She looked into the eyes of those who stood with her, faces filled with encouragement, solidarity, and a shared understanding of the struggle they all faced. The second officer's expression darkened, but Mia pressed on. "You think this is just about me? It's about all of us who have been treated like we don't matter, who have been pushed aside because of who we are. You can't intimidate us into submission. We deserve respect." The crowd began to chant, a rhythmic echo of her words, amplifying her courage. "Respect, respect, respect." Each shout felt like a drumbeat, reinforcing her resolve. In that moment, she felt a transformation within herself. The fear that had gripped her moments ago was now battling against a burgeoning sense of empowerment. She was no longer just a victim of circumstance. She was a voice for change. As the officers exchanged glances, uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Mia recognized this shift. They hadn't anticipated the collective force of the crowd. The moment felt electric, charged with possibility. Yet a part of her remained anxious. What if the officers decided to escalate the situation? What if this led to violence? But the fear began to fade, replaced by a fierce determination to stand her ground. Just then, a woman from the crowd, An older figure with a weathered yet kind face stepped forward. "We've seen this before," she said, her voice strong and clear. "We're not going to let you intimidate us anymore. We're here to support her and to demand accountability." Mia felt a swell of gratitude for this woman and all those who had gathered. Their presence was a shield against the fear that had threatened to overwhelm her. The second officer's frustration was palpable, and for the first time, Mia sensed that the power dynamic was shifting. In the midst of the chaos, her mind raced. This was a pivotal moment, a point of no return. She could feel the weight of her past experiences pressing upon her, the countless times she had felt powerless. But now, standing there, she realized that she had the power to redefine her narrative. This was not just her fight. It was a fight against the systemic injustices that had silenced so many voices before hers. As the crowd continued to rally, Mia felt a newfound sense of purpose. She understood that this was more than a confrontation with the police. It was a larger battle against societal norms that perpetuated discrimination and fear. The stakes were high, but she also felt a flicker of hope, a belief that change was possible. The second officer's face twisted in anger, and he barked orders at the crowd, demanding they disperse, but their resolve only strengthened. Mia's heart raced as she realized the implications of this moment. This was not merely about her standing up to an officer, but about igniting a movement. The crowd's unity was a challenge to the status quo, a declaration that they would not be silenced. As she stood there, surrounded by those who had come to her aid, Mia felt a profound sense of empowerment. She had crossed a threshold. She was no longer just a participant in her own life, but an active agent of change. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and potential backlash, but she was ready to face whatever came next. In that instant, Mia knew she was not only fighting for herself, but for every individual who had ever felt marginalized and unheard. The moment had transformed her, shifting her perspective from one of fear to one of fierce determination. She was ready to embrace the fight, knowing that together they could create a ripple of change that could resonate far beyond this single moment. As the chants grew louder, Mia felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. This was her moment, and she would seize it. The crowd was with her, their collective energy a powerful force against the looming threats. The climax of this confrontation was just on the horizon, and as she took a step forward, she felt an undeniable truth. They would fight together, and they would not be silenced. As the chants of the crowd echoed in the air, Mia felt an intoxicating mix of adrenaline and fear coursing through her veins. The immediate repercussions of her bold declaration were palpable. She could see the faces of those around her light up with a shared sense of purpose, yet beneath that excitement she sensed an undercurrent of anxiety. The officers, now more than just figures of authority, had become embodiments of the systemic oppression they were all fighting against. Mia's heart raced as she processed the reality of what she had just done. She had made a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had felt the oppressive weight of fear. Yet the gravity of her actions began to settle in. She was now a target. The second officer, visibly agitated, moved to call for reinforcements, and Mia instinctively braced for the fallout. She could feel the collective heartbeat of the crowd. It was a mix of anticipation and dread. The older woman who had spoken earlier stood beside Mia, her resolute demeanor a source of strength. "They'll try to intimidate us," she said softly, barely above a whisper yet heavy with conviction. "But remember, we're stronger together." Mia nodded, anchoring herself in the moment, but doubt flickered in her mind. What if they were overwhelmed? What if this turned violent? As the officers began to push forward, attempting to disperse the crowd, a sense of urgency swept over Mia. The moment had transformed her, but it had also opened up a Pandora's box of challenges. She could see the fear in the eyes of some participants, especially the younger ones who had rallied in support. Mia realized that her courage had ignited a fire, but it also brought the risk of backlash. They were now all in this together, and the implications weighed heavily on her shoulders. In the immediate aftermath, Mia began to notice the shifting dynamics within the crowd. Some people looked around nervously, unsure of whether to stay or leave. Others, emboldened by her words, raised their voices even louder, chanting for justice and accountability. The atmosphere was electric, yet the tension was palpable. It was a delicate balance between hope and fear, and Mia felt the weight of responsibility for those who looked to her for guidance. As the officers continued to advance, she saw Clara step forward, her expression fierce. "We won't back down," Clara shouted, her voice cutting through the unease. Mia admired her bravery, but it also made her reflect on the potential consequences. What if Clara were arrested? What if someone got hurt? The thought sent a chill through her. It was one thing to stand up for oneself. It was another to lead others into danger. Mia's mind raced as she grappling with the new reality. The fight was no longer just against the officers, but against a system that had long silenced their voices. She felt the weight of her past experiences, the times she had felt powerless, and understood that this moment was a turning point not just for her, but for everyone. They were standing at the precipice of change, but that change came with risks. In the midst of the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged from the crowd. A local journalist who had been covering protests for years. He raised his camera, capturing the moment. "This is history," he shouted, urging the crowd to stay united. His presence reminded Mia that their struggle was not just personal, it was part of a larger narrative. But with that recognition came a new challenge, the potential for their struggle to be misrepresented or exploited. Mia took a deep breath, grounding herself in the chaos. It was time to act. She turned to the crowd, her voice steady. "This isn't just about today. It's about the future. We need to show them we won't be silenced, no matter the cost." The crowd responded with renewed vigor, but Mia could sense the fear still lurking beneath the surface. As the tension escalated, she felt a surge of determination. She had to find a way to channel this energy into something constructive. Mia glanced at Clara and the older woman, both of whom nodded at her, their support unwavering. She could see that they were ready to follow her lead, and that realization ignited a spark within her. Mia understood that the path forward would be fraught with challenges. There would be pushback from authorities, backlash from those who disagreed with their cause, and the ever-present threat of violence. But she could also see the potential for allies to join them, for a movement to grow beyond this moment. This was an opportunity to not only confront injustice, but to foster community and create lasting change. With each passing second, the stakes rose higher, and with them, Mia's resolve deepened. She had crossed a threshold into a new reality, one where her voice and the voices of many others would not be silenced. And as she stood there, surrounded by a crowd that was now a living embodiment of hope, she knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger fight for justice, a fight that would redefine her life and the lives of those around her. Mia felt the pulse of the crowd around her, a rhythm of hope and uncertainty that mirrored her own heart. As she stood amidst the chanting voices, she began to grasp the profound impact of her earlier declaration. The initial rush of courage was now entwined with a burgeoning sense of responsibility, and with it came the realization that she was no longer just Mia, the quiet girl who observed from the sidelines, but a catalyst for change. In the days that followed, she found herself reflecting on the lessons learned from that pivotal moment. The fear that had once paralyzed her began to morph into a driving force. Instead of shying away from conflict, she started to embrace it, recognizing that confrontation was not merely an act of defiance, but a necessary step toward progress. Each encounter with the officers became a lesson in resilience, teaching her how to navigate the complexities of protest, the nuances of leadership, and the importance of unity. As Mia engaged with the crowd, she noticed the transformation within herself and those around her. The initial anxiety that had marked their faces was gradually replaced with determination. She watched as individuals who had once hesitated to speak out found their voices, inspired by her bravery. Their stories began to intertwine with hers, creating a tapestry of shared experiences and collective strength. Mia realized that the bonds forged in struggle were becoming a source of empowerment, and she was no longer alone in her quest for justice. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Mia made a pivotal decision. She organized a community meeting, inviting those who had been affected by the oppressive actions of the authorities. As people shared their experiences, Mia felt an overwhelming sense of solidarity. It was in these moments that she understood the true power of collective action. Each voice added weight to their cause, and together they began to brainstorm strategies, plans, and solutions. Mia found herself not only organizing, but also inspiring others to take the lead, stepping back to allow new leaders to emerge. The shift in her demeanor became evident. Where she once hesitated, now she stood firm. She tackled challenges head-on, whether it was negotiating with local businesses for support or addressing the media with poise. Mia's confidence grew, and with it, her ability to inspire others. Clara, the fierce friend who had stood by her side, became her right hand, and together they created a network of allies who were equally passionate about their cause. Their friendship deepened, evolving into a powerful partnership that encouraged both of them to push boundaries and explore new ideas. As the movement gained traction, Mia began to see tangible results. Local organizations started reaching out, offering resources and support. Community members who had initially been hesitant began to join their rallies, bringing with them diverse perspectives and experiences. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The fear that had once held them back was now being replaced with hope and determination. Mia's growth was not without its struggles, though. Moments of doubt still crept in, especially when faced with setbacks. There were times when she felt overwhelmed, questioning whether they could truly affect change against such a daunting system. But she learned to lean on her newfound community for support, recognizing that vulnerability was not a weakness but a part of the journey. With Clara and their allies beside her, Mia discovered the strength that came from shared burdens and collective resilience. The anticipation of what was to come hung in the air, a mix of optimism and tension. Mia understood that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she now viewed these obstacles as opportunities for growth. Each small victory, whether it was a peaceful protest, a successful meeting with local leaders, or simply the act of standing together, built upon the last, creating a momentum that was impossible to ignore. With each passing day, the urgency of their mission grew clearer. Mia envisioned a future where their voices would not only be heard, but respected. She felt a sense of clarity about her purpose, and in that clarity, she found peace. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The fire ignited within her was now a beacon for others, drawing them into a movement that was no longer just about her, but about a collective dream for justice and equality. As she stood before the crowd once more, ready to lead them into the next phase of their fight, Mia felt an unshakable belief in their cause. This was not just a moment. It was a movement, and she was ready to embrace the challenges ahead with courage and conviction. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the gathering, Mia felt an electric tension in the air. The crowd had swelled, pulsating with anticipation, but beneath the surface a storm was brewing. Reports had surfaced of an impending police crackdown, and whispers of intimidation tactics circulated like wildfire among the protesters. Mia's heart raced as she stood at the forefront, her resolve tested by the very fears she had fought to overcome. The night before, Clara had pulled Mia aside, her brow furrowed with concern. What if they come for us? What if they try to silence us? The uncertainty in Clara's voice echoed Mia's own doubts, but she had looked into her friend's eyes and found the familiar flicker of determination. They had agreed that fear could not dictate their actions. Yet now, as the moment of truth loomed, Mia felt the weight of her words pressing down like a leaden cloak. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air, a chilling reminder of the struggle they faced. Mia's breath hitched. The officers had arrived in full force, clad in riot gear, their presence a stark warning. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting from the uniforms to Mia, seeking her guidance. It was in this moment that she realized the magnitude of her role. She was not just leading a protest, she was the heartbeat of a movement that could not afford to falter. As the first officer stepped forward, demanding that the crowd disperse, Mia felt the urge to retreat, to let the fear take over, but she remembered the stories shared in their community meetings, the pain that had driven them all to this point. This was not just about her anymore. It was about every voice that had been silenced, every person who had suffered under the weight of injustice. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward, heart pounding in her chest. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. It was a simple word, but it held the weight of countless struggles. "We will not be silenced. We stand together, united in our demand for justice." The crowd erupted in a chorus of agreement, voices rising in a swell that drowned out the sirens. They were no longer afraid. They were emboldened. In that moment, Mia felt the shift. The officers hesitated, caught off guard by the sheer force of unity emanating from the crowd. It was a pivotal standoff, a clash of wills. Mia's heart raced as she realized this was her moment, the culmination of everything she had learned. She had to be the leader they needed, to embody the resilience she had discovered within herself. With a deep breath, she stepped closer to the line of officers, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "You may have the power to intimidate us, but you do not have the power to break our spirit. We are here for justice, for our community, and we will not back down." The crowd roared, a wave of sound that surged forward, rallying behind her. But the officers remained unmoved, their expressions cold and determined. The tension crackled like electricity, and Mia felt a moment of doubt creep in. What if they didn't back down? What if this ended in violence? But as she looked out at the faces of her friends and supporters, she remembered the lessons of vulnerability and strength. This was their fight, and she would not abandon them. "Together!" she called out, raising her fist in solidarity. "We are stronger than fear. We are stronger than oppression." The chant echoed through the streets, a declaration of their determination. The officers shifted, their grip on their shields loosening ever so slightly, and in that moment, Mia seized the opportunity. "Let's show them what we stand for. Let's show them that we will not be ignored." As the crowd surged forward, a wave of collective energy washed over them. The officers faltered, their line beginning to break. Mia felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had tapped into something greater than herself, the power of unity. They were not just individuals anymore. They were a force to be reckoned with. The standoff reached its climax, when Mia, emboldened by the swell of voices around her, stepped even closer to the line of officers. "You are not our enemies," she shouted, her voice unwavering. "We want change. We want to be heard. Join us instead of fighting us." In that moment, a crack appeared in the facade of authority. One officer, his expression softening, lowered his shield just a fraction. It was a small gesture, but it resonated through the crowd like a tremor of hope. They had turned the tide, if only for a moment, and Mia felt the weight of possibility on her shoulders. As the crowd erupted into applause and shouts of solidarity, Mia knew this was just the beginning. They had faced their greatest challenge, and together they had found strength in their unity. The fear that had once threatened to consume her was now nothing more than a distant memory, overshadowed by the power of collective action and the unwavering bond they had forged. In that electrifying moment, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, Mia understood that they were not just fighting for justice. They were redefining what it meant to be a community, a movement, and a force for change. And as they stood together, united in their resolve, Mia felt an overwhelming sense of hope that propelled them forward into the future. As the crowd began to disperse, the weight of the night lingered in the air, a bittersweet mixture of triumph and uncertainty. Mia stood at the edge of the gathering, watching as her friends embraced one another, tears mingling with laughter. The adrenaline that had surged through her moments ago was now slowly ebbing, leaving behind a profound sense of exhaustion. But even amid the fatigue, she felt a newfound clarity. They had faced the storm and emerged, if not unscathed, then undeniably stronger. In the days that followed, the protest became a rallying point for their community. Media coverage amplified their message, drawing attention to the injustices that had long been overlooked. Mia found herself thrust into the spotlight as a reluctant leader, her story woven into the narrative of the movement. Every interview was a reminder of the courage it took to stand up, not just for herself, but for those who could not. She realized that her voice had become a beacon of hope, inspiring others to share their stories, to speak out against oppression. Yet with this new role came scrutiny. Mia faced criticism from those who questioned her methods and tactics. Doubts crept in, and late at night, she often found herself staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made the right choices. But as she reflected on the unity they had forged, the way fear had transformed into empowerment, she recognized the lessons woven into her journey. She understood now that leadership was not about being flawless, it was about being authentic, about embracing vulnerability while fueling the fire of change. Clara became a steadfast ally during this tumultuous time. The bond they shared deepened as they navigated the complexities of activism together. They spent hours strategizing and planning, drawing strength from one another. Clara's unwavering support reminded Mia that she was not alone in this fight. Their friendship blossomed, rooted in shared purpose and understanding. They had both grown, realizing that their individual struggles were intertwined within a larger narrative of resilience. The other protesters, too, found their voices amplified. Stories of pain transformed into tales of hope, and the community began to rally around one another. Old friendships were reignited, and new alliances were formed. Mia witnessed the transformation of her neighborhood, where once divided opinions now converged into a collective call for justice. The initial fear that had gripped their hearts was now replaced with a fierce determination to stand together, to face whatever came next. As the weeks turned into months, Mia's resolve solidified. The movement gained momentum, inspiring similar protests in neighboring towns. With every event, she felt the warmth of solidarity. It was a reminder that they were part of something much bigger than themselves. Each voice added to the chorus of change, each story a thread in the tapestry of their fight for justice. Mia began to realize that the road ahead would not be easy. Change would be slow, fraught with challenges and setbacks. But she had learned that true strength lay not just in the victories, but in the perseverance to continue, despite the obstacles. She had witnessed the impact of their collective action, and it ignited a fire within her. The fight for justice was an ongoing journey, one that required patience and unwavering commitment. As she prepared for the next rally, Mia stood before the mirror and repeated the affirmations she had come to cherish. She was a leader. She was a voice for the voiceless. She was part of a movement that would echo through history. The fear that had once threatened to consume her was now a distant memory, replaced by the empowering realization that she was capable of creating change. In the end, it wasn't just about the protests or the policies. It was about the connections forged in the fire of struggle. The movement had transformed her, and through it she had learned that true empowerment comes from unity, from standing shoulder to shoulder with others who share the dream of a better world. As she stepped out into the world, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Mia knew that they would not be silenced. Together, they would continue to rise, forging a path toward justice and equality for all. As the weeks turned into months, the fight for justice raged on, and Mia found herself at a crossroads. The movement had grown, but with it came the weight of expectation and the haunting memories of the battles they had fought. Each rally, each speech brought forth the ghosts of those who had suffered. The friends lost to violence, families torn apart by indifference. The momentum was exhilarating, yet it was also exhausting. Mia had become a symbol of resilience, but the reality of her journey was far more complex. While she inspired countless individuals to raise their voices, she had also ignited a fire within herself that threatened to consume her. The lines between right and wrong blurred, and with every setback, the allure of vengeance whispered in her ear. The injustices they fought against had a face, and that face belonged to those who had perpetuated the cycle of oppression. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of protests, Mia received a message that sent her world into a tailspin. A close friend, a fellow activist who had been on the front lines with her, had been attacked, targeted for their advocacy. The pain struck deep, and a rage ignited within her that she had never known before. This was not just about justice anymore, it was personal. The desire for revenge clawed at her heart, urging her to take matters into her own hands. Clara noticed the change in Mia. The light that had once shone brightly in her eyes dimmed as the shadows of vengeance crept in. Clara urged her to focus on the positive impact they had made together, to remember that they were part of a collective movement, not solitary warriors. Yet Mia found herself unable to shake the feeling that the system would never change unless they confronted those who had perpetuated the cycle of violence. In a moment of desperation, Mia made a choice that would alter the course of her life forever. She organized a demonstration at the heart of the city, but this time it would not be just a gathering of voices. It would be a confrontation. She rallied those who felt the same pain, those who craved justice in a way that transcended mere words. They marched to the doorstep of those in power, demanding accountability, but for Mia, it was also a chance to settle the score. As the night unfolded, anger and chaos erupted. The protest turned into an all-out clash, and in the fray, Mia found herself face to face with the very individuals who had caused her so much anguish. The confrontation was raw and visceral. She could feel the weight of their indifference, the scars etched into her community, and the blood of her friend on her hands. But in that moment, as she stood poised to exact her revenge, she realized the cost of what she was about to do. The realization struck like lightning, illuminating the path she had been on. Vengeance would not heal the wounds, it would only deepen them. The very cycle she sought to break would continue to spiral, perpetuating the darkness that had consumed her. In the end, Mia stepped back, the fire in her heart replaced by a profound sorrow. The fight for justice was not just about avenging the wrongs. It was about healing, about breaking the cycle of pain. She turned her back on the confrontation, choosing instead to pick up the pieces of her community and her own heart. It was a bittersweet victory. She had reclaimed her agency, but the emotional toll was heavy. A reminder that the journey toward justice is fraught with difficult choices and heavy burdens. Mia learned that true strength lies not in vengeance, but in the courage to forgive and to continue fighting for what is right, even when the cost is high. As she walked away from the confrontation, she knew the challenges would persist, but she was more prepared than ever to face them. Her journey would continue, and so would her commitment to those who had suffered. The echoes of their stories would guide her, and she would carry them as a badge of honor, not as a weapon of vengeance. In that realization, there was a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the path toward justice remains illuminated by the light of unity and resilience. If you've watched it to the end, write in the comments, "I watched it to the end." We'd love to know what you thought, and don't leave yet. Click on the video of the final screen and check out another story that will move you. We're waiting for you there.